So, in 1997, after waiting so long and finally having the creativity to make the movies that he wanted to make, we finally get to one of his two biggest moneymakers in this guy's filmography. And that is, of course, Titanic. Let's talk about it.
Kick-ass.
Keep your eyes closed, don't peek.
I'm not.
Do you trust me?
I trust you.
Open your eyes.
Do not let go of my hand!
I'll never let go.
Rated PG-13.
What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Camera Reviews. I know I was supposed to have this done after Avatar before The Way of Water, but things has been a little bit complicated on my end. But here we go. This is going to be my thoughts on Titanic. If you guys are new to the channel, all my social media links are in the description box down below, to my Facebook, all the way up to my serialized. That way you will not miss any notifications for more reviews like this, especially more classic reviews in 2023. So, with that being said, let's get started. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the bell to get notified when newest videos are up, because I do post more videos like this. And with that being said, let's talk about one of the highest grossing movies ever in Titanic. Titanic came out in the year 1997. What a great year for films that was. Of course, this is directed and written by James Cameron, incorporating historical and fictionalized aspects. This stars a massive cast. You have Leonardo DiCaprio, Kate Winslet, Zane, Kathy Bates, Frances Fisher, Gloria Stewart, Susie R.M.S, Bernard Hill, Jonathan Hyde, Victor Garber, Danny Nucci, David Warner, and the late Bill Paxton. Cameron, his inspiration for this movie, how did this movie come to be? He came from fascinations with shipwrecks, and he did his research about the Titanic. So he felt a love story would disperse with the human loss would be essential for the emotional impact of the disaster that he wanted to do in this movie. So the movie basically came together, and he started making this movie in 1995, 1 year after making True Lies. He first shot footage of the Titanic wreck. The modern scenes on the research vessel were shot aboard the academic Winslet, and so he started writing the script, making this. He casted a lot of great actors and people who would go on to have bigger careers, and he used scale models, CGI and such, and recreating the Titanic built at Baja Studios, and it was co-financed by Paramount and 20th Century Fox, with Fox handling the international rights and Paramount doing North America. And at the time, this was the most expensive movie ever made, with a production budget of $200 million. So a lot of people considered this was going to be a box office bomb because of that much money. But upon the release on December 19th, Titanic got great success. Critical and commercial success, got nominated for 14 Oscars and won 11, including Best Director and Best Picture, and it got the most Oscars for a single film, and it was the first movie to reach the $1 billion mark. And over the years, this movie has been talked about so much. It's been selected for preservation in the National Film Registry, and a lot of people have been very divided on this movie since its release. So, this is one of those big money makers, of course. It has known for being one of them. And it's also over the years garnered this either love it or hate type relationship, especially for the historical stuff and the romance. Me personally, I've always really enjoyed this movie a lot, ever since I first saw it on cable on TBS TNT. And over the years, I've always really loved this movie. It has never made my 100 favorite movies of all time, but it did make honorable mentions because it is a good movie. And for this rewatch, I decided to treat this, as well as this next movie I'm going to talk about, as an old Hollywood epic, taking intermission in between this. And not one of my favorite movies of all time, this is still a great film, but I do think this movie has its issues, and we're going to talk about it, and there are some things that stop this from giving me a 5 out of 5. I wouldn't go as far as to say it's the greatest thing since sliced bread, and it's not the most historical Titanic movie, but it is still a movie I think is very overhated. So this is going to be an interesting conversation. So Titanic is centered around a fictional romance against the ill-fated maiden voyage of the R.M.S. Titanic, and the pride and joy of the White Star Line, and at the time, the largest moving object ever built. She was the most luxurious liner of her era, the ship of dreams, which ultimately carried over 15,000 people to their death in the ice-cold waters of the North Atlantic in the early hours of April 15, 1912. But we also focus on a fictionalized romance with two different classes of people. You have Jack, who is a very not so rich character who who got a ticket in a bet to be on the Titanic, and he's just want to enjoy every single minute of it. While you also have Rose DeWitt, who is tired of being rich, and she's tired of being controlled, and she wants to basically explore, adventure the world, and she feels like she's not going to get her own freedom. That is the plot of Titanic in a nutshell. Like I said, I have loved this movie ever since I was younger. I first heard about it through my mom and my sisters. I remember seeing a VHS with 2 VHS tapes, and it was the movie. At first I thought it was special features, but looking at the back of the box, I was a little thrown off by the movie's runtime a little bit. But at the time, I hadn't gotten used to sitting through movies that long yet, so it did take me a while to get into it.
Life's as extreme as you wanna make it!
So, I can confidently say that I still, over the years, on this rewatch, really like this movie. Again, there are some problems, and we will talk about those problems. Let's discuss the good of the movie first, because there is some good in this movie. First off, the scale and the scope of this movie. This is nothing short of sheer spectacular. From its amazing, riveting, spectacular costume design by Deborah Scott, and by the lavish, magnificent production design by Peter Lamont, you definitely feel like you're in the era of where the Titanic sinks. You do some great costume work, the production is very well done, you get some very good looking production design and some great costume work here, and all of that is definitely there in terms of what it's setting out to do. You can tell that Cameron wanted to put all of the $200 million into the movie, and he wanted to do the best he could in making this movie. For someone who's always very ambitious, he does take risks when it comes to this, and that's what I appreciate about this movie. He definitely knows exactly, for someone who's willing to take a risk about this, you definitely feel like you're in the era of this movie taking place in. It's all in one location, for the most part, and which I am a sucker for that. And I do think that the way this movie plays out, you definitely feel like you're on the adventure with them. You're along for the ride. You're along for the journey. You're along with the characters and stuff. And that is what I really appreciate when it comes to a movie like this. Because with a movie like this in one location on a fictional event, it's easy to get lazy with this. But James Cameron, he's always an ambitious director who shoots for the stars, who's never gonna let you down. And that is what I appreciate when it comes to this movie. And direction-wise, James Cameron is a master at work. His direction is spot on. Not only at helming the romantic love story, but also helming the sinking of Titanic. And he definitely understood what he had to do, and he had to get the sinking the Titanic right. In the one other Titanic movie, and I to remember, you don't see the way it sinks, the cracks, but when you get into that, I think it's really, really well done, and it's very good. So it could definitely give the scope and the direction a lot of credit. Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet, for their first movie playing a romantic couple from two different worlds, they have excellent chemistry. Like I said, Leonardo DiCaprio, at first he didn't want to do this. There was other people like Billy Crudup who weren't going to take this part, and you have other actors like people like Stephen Dorff and Chris O'Donnell and Matthew McConaughey and River Phoenix before he unfortunately died. But Cameron's picked Leonardo DiCaprio, and I think he was 21 at the time, and I think Leonardo DiCaprio's performance is great. He is really good as Jack. You can tell he wants to live for the moment. He wants to be a part of everything and experience Titanic and just enjoy his life. He's also an artist too, so you definitely buy his chemistry on the side of things, and I think that he does a really good job in this movie. And he's fantastic. Kate Winslet, one of her earliest roles after Heavenly Creatures. Now initially, Gwyneth Paltrow and Winona Ryder, Gabrielle Anwar and Claire Danes, even Reese Witherspoon had all been considered for the role, but they all turned it down. But Kate Winslet, she heavily campaigned for this part, and she fought to get this part. And at first, Cameron was unsure about it, but after the screen test definitely did win him over, Winslet sent Cameron a single rose from your rose, and so she got the part. It took a lot of guts for Kate Winslet, but she got that part for that, and she is great in her. Yes, there are times where you do hear her usual accent slip in and out, but I think she does a great job at keeping the accent that is required for her, and she is incredible here. You can tell that they both have really solid chemistry in here. I think they do a convincing job at doing what is required for the script that tells them to do. And I love their scenes together. It does take a while for the stuff to get going, but even when stuff gets going down, it's fantastic. And when you see their scenes of romantic love, it's beautiful, but it's also emotional to watch, knowing what happens to one of them. And they both do a very convincing job. And yes, I'll say this. We all know about the infamous scene with Kate Winslet where Jack draws Rose. I'll say this. For a PG-13 movie, that is a more classy and tastefully done scene without being gratuitous. And it's done in a way that is not gratuitous. It's masterfully handled by James Cameron. I just have to point that out there. But the rest of the cast is great as well, ranging from so many great people like the late Gloria Stewart as an older Rose, Billy Zane as Cal Hockley, which the performance is great. We'll get into the character a little bit later on. You also have Kathy Bates, who I just like seeing Kathy Bates as an actress in anything. She's just a nice girl saying, I got all this money, I just want to enjoy it, I want to help people out. And she does help out Jack and find a suit for a dinner. That was really cool. You also have Bernard Hill from the Lord of the Rings trilogy in here, David Warner as Lovejoy, Jonathan Hyde, Danny Nucci, Frances Fisher as Rose's mom, of course. You got Susie Amiz in here, and all the way up to a young Ian Grufford, who will later go on to be Mr. Fantastic in the two Tim Story Fantastic Four movies. So all around, you have a amazing set of actors in this movie, and I think they all do magnificent jobs. Sure, there are times when it comes to the two leads where it can be a little bit cheesy, but that's not on them. That's more the writing, and I will get into that. The cast is amazing here. With a romance epic disaster about like this, you gotta have a good cast. And everyone does a great job in the acting departments. Getting into the technical aspects here, you gotta talk about the special effects. The way he chooses to blend CGI and practical effects and miniatures and make it believable, so incredible. Even ILM did help him out with his own company, Digital Domain. So the effects in that big anticlimax there, awesome. I love the way he shows the whole attack on Titanic here. I do very much enjoy that. That is my favorite moment in the movie. I love the romance in here, but it's really that half of the movie where things really starts to get going and where shit really starts to hit the fans with the disaster and the wreckage of Titanic. You can tell the actors are doing a very good job. You can tell that the effects money and the performances and all of that is handled in the most great, best way possible, and nothing feels like it's taken for granted. Nothing feels like it's half-assed. He put the $200 million budget to use, and it's sad, it's emotional, it's intense, but it's very, very epic in the way it's done. And the wreckage of Titanic and seeing Jack and Rose and all these other historical figures and even some of the fictionalized characters trying to survive in this big situation is awesome. It's great, but it's really the execution of it. And for the effects in 1997, they still hold up very well. I've already touched on the costume and production design, so I have no reason to go any further than that. But all I'll say is the cinematography by Russell Carpenter is gorgeous at the most. There is some green screen work, but you could tell they did shoot this on the actual Titanic. It feels like you're on the actual Titanic. Some of the close-ups and some of the camera shots and the trickery that he uses, once again, to the absolute minute detail. Incredible cinematography. Each shot feels like a painting you would see at a museum. The sound design is phenomenal. The sound design and sound mixing, especially with, you hear all the different sounds of the bells, Titanic, and the well-deserved Oscar achievement for Derek. That is well earned though. As I did say, again, the first act and even the second act with some of the past stuff and some of the present stuff where this crew, they do find the painting Jack did. I thought that was very interesting. Some of it was really good too. But this has another one of my favorite scores by the late great James Horner. It's beautiful, it's emotional, it's grand, and amazingly well done, and it's even intense when you get to the disastrous part. James Horner was a great composer. Even though he did reuse some of his own music a few times, he was a great composer who was at the top of his game back then. And so for that, James Horner definitely gets that respect that he deserves from me. And his score is definitely a great score. One of my favorite movie scores ever. And the song My Heart Will Go On is a beautiful song. Even though some people say it's overplayed, I really like the song. I think it's beautiful. I think it's romantic. Even though you could say it's cheesy as hell or overplayed, but I really like that song. And when you get to the sinking the Titanic, it's one of the greatest sequences in the movie history, and you could tell that Cameron knows about the subject, even though there are some things he mess up on, and it honors this tragedy while having his fictional romance, because Cameron definitely does have a say. And it's also a well-edited movie, for the most part, by him, Richard A. Harris, and Conrad Buck. 3 hours and 15 minutes. I don't feel anything for the most part. Now, as much as I'm praising this movie, there are some things Cameron does do wrong. So, as much as I'm gushing about this amazing film, I definitely got some problems. I think this movie is 3 hours and 16 minutes, far too long. And this could have easily used some 25 to 35 minutes being trimmed. I know Avatar The Way of Water, people are criticizing the runtime, and trust me, I am one of those people who is a little judgmental about the runtime. And it's not that I don't have a problem sitting through 3 hour long movies, or even 4.5 hour long movies. I just think not every movie needs to be 2.5 hours to 3.5 hours long. Because movies can be very long nowadays. Even TV shows can be very long nowadays with how many episodes you play out. But you could have easily took 25 to 30 minutes out, or 35 minutes out. Mainly the stuff with some of the stuff with the presents. You didn't really need that. It's great seeing Bill Paxton and Susie R.M.S. and the rest of that cast there. And you heard the story from Rose's point of view, and I understand a part of why it's there. But there is some draggy parts in this movie, in the Titanic moments, especially with some of the romance stuff. You have some things here that you could easily benefit a little bit from just a little bit of pacing. Make it 2 hours and 21 minutes or just do like the intermission thing, old Hollywood thing, with an intermission. So if you're gonna watch this movie, be warned that this is a long movie. And you will definitely have to have an intermission with some coffee or something. Or treat it like an old Hollywood movie like I did. Some of the dialogue in this movie is not the greatest. There is some very cheesy writing when it comes to this movie. It's very over the top. There is some cheesy ass dialogue. Like, seriously. Cameron is a great screenwriter, but there are times where he gets a little bit cheesy with his dialogue. Especially with some of the love dialogue and some with the over the top dialogue.
This is where we first met.
Now, there are some good lines in the script, like, I will never let go, Jack, I promise, or I want you to draw me like one of your French girls, or even the infamous line everybody quotes, I'm the king of the world. Even he quoted it when he won his best picture and best director. But there is just some script things here in terms of some dialogue and some characters are a little bit weird. I felt like there was a better way you could have went about it. Also, this movie does have some historical inaccuracies. Now, the sinking of the Titanic, you got that right. I'll give you that. Now, this is something I can tend to overlook if it's based on a historical event or book. And there are times where Cameron does choose his fantasy driven over historical accuracy, which is alright to do at times. But in a few other cases, it comes at the cost of messing up what you're trying to go for. I'll give you a good example and a bad example. There's the historical person who foresaw the creation of the ship. There were historical accounts where he did assist the passengers to evacuate, going as far as to throw furniture in the boats to help levitate people from the cold oceans. But here, Thomas's fate focuses more on the clock, and he dies right there. Something he did do, but it was the only thing he did when Titanic was seeking. Now, it's not really much of a problem. However, the biggest historical problem here is Officer Murdoch. The way this is handled, I'm sorry, James Cameron, you did not need this. I'm sorry. The moment when officers shoot their guns to keep the crowd under control is redundant, and it is very just Hollywood-esque, and you could easily taken this out of the movie. The first officer shoots a couple of passengers and he kills himself in guilt.
That is literally the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Let me handle this. That idea is just the worst.
That didn't happen on the actual Titanic. Now, according to the commentary, which I have not heard but did find out on IMDb, he did apologize to Murdoch's family for that, citing he was taking liberties there. While it's not insulting or anything as much as it should be, I just think that could have been done better. It's not as bad as the Pocahontas, but you could have done better with that.
This is me being reasonable.
I'm just gonna get my biggest fucking thing with this movie out of the way. I cannot stand the character of Cal Hockley and the mother in this movie. Now, on one end, I do like the performances, of course. And Billy Zane, he's trying to get married to her, to get married to Rose, and so he could do whatever he wants with her and treat her like crap. And he's definitely very abusive. So you do get a good over-the-top performance out of Billy Zane. And with Frances Fisher's character, you do understand why she's trying to make Rose marry Cal, because they're about to go broke and she wants to stay rich for as long as she lives. So you do understand a little bit of her motivation, and she gets what's coming to her. But the Cal Hockley, fuck that dude. I fucking hate this character. Especially some of the shit he does, throwing a table, which that shot to Kate Winslet when they shot that scene.
My fiancé! Yes, you are, and my wife in practice, if not yet by law, so you will honor me. You will honor me the way a wife is required to honor her husband. Not is it any way unclear? Excuse me.
And hitting her, going, framing Jack for stealing the heart, the ocean heart. I'm sitting there like, you are the most despicable fucking character I've ever seen in my life. And I really want this character something bad to happen to him. And it got to a point where it was just annoying and obnoxious. I wanted to jump into my screen rewatching this and just fucking punch him in the freaking face. It's like, dude, quit doing that to Jack and Rose. Even going as far as to getting the gun trying to shoot them, I'm like, please let this character get to what's coming to him.
Are you cold? What to him? To be a whore, to a gutter rat?
I'd rather be his whore than your wife.
No! I said no!
You get nothing! You lose! Good day, sir!
You bastard!
Everyone has your own movie palette of a movie of your choice. Well, stick around because I'm going to tell you guys a little bit about moviepalette.com. So Movie Palette is an official website where you go online and you're able to get any color palette of a movie of your choice. The movies ranges from Harry Potter to Titanic to something like The Lord of the Rings, The Wizard of Oz, The Matrix, Enter the Dragon, Avatar, you name it, those movies are all on moviepalette.com. If you don't see a movie of yours that you love that's on there, you can definitely put in the request section and they will have that request and they will do it for you. This is a very awesome idea of movie palettes where they take a series of scenes and they make it into one big giant canvas, making it for the entire color scheme of that said movie. It's really awesome. I was very fortunate to get one of these. Mine is of course Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, and it is amazing. If you guys want one of these movie palettes, definitely go to moviepalette.com and order one, and also be sure to use my discount Future15. That's FUTURE15. Anyone who uses my discount code, I will get 20% off for every commission that everyone uses. Use that discount if you want one. Pick out one of your choice, and with that being said, thank you, Movie Palette, for allowing me to talk about this in this video. All in that, going deep into my pros and deep into my cons, I really do enjoy Titanic still. Again, it's still one of my favorite romance movies, still one of my favorite movies of all time, but it is not a masterpiece everyone says it is, nor is it the worst thing ever that most people, especially most Titanic die-hard researchers, would see. Despite not being in my top 100, it's got so many things going for it, for the performances, the acting, the script, mostly the cinematography, the technical aspects, the direction, the filmmaking on display to be pure worthy of. But it definitely has issues in terms of its historical inaccuracy and a lot of dialogue and some very over-the-top villains and some inaccuracies that could have been a little better that people tend to overlook with this. Again, not a masterpiece that everyone says it is, but it is one of my favorite James Cameron films, and I still really love it to this day. But if you're someone who's never seen Titanic, just be warned that there are a few inaccuracies here. And the movie is a big, long, gargantuan one-time event. Treat this like an intermission, and I think you will like it. And for those of you who didn't like the movie the first time, check it out with fresh eyes and see how you react to it. I'm not making this out to be the greatest thing since sliced bread, but I don't think it's the disaster everyone says it is. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to give this movie a better than Vampire Diaries. And I stand corrected. If people don't like the movie because it's not the Titanic movie, it's fine. We still have movies like A Night to Remember, which I want to talk about that next year. Well, that's going to do it for the video that you just watched. I will have my channel here, so you would like to see anything here, click the channel icon, subscribe for more. I will also leave a video and maybe a playlist here, so in case you want to see what I'm about. As always, stay Epictasticness, join the Epictasticness, and you guys keep it cool.